Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. This week we're going to be talking all about Doctor Who, specifically the first few episodes of this new Doctor Who Disney Plus season, Space Babies, The Devil's Chord, and Boom. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on? This was fun. We I had already watched all these episodes, but effectively I rewatched them with you a couple days ago.
Yep.
When you sat down to watch them, so should be a fun one. Yeah, we're both longtime Whovian fans. You know super weird deep cut lore from like original stuff that I don't know and don't care about. But
to be fair, most people don't know and don't care about it either.
Yeah. But yeah, it should be a fun one. If you like the show, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the first few episodes here of Doctor Who Season 1, in quotes, because Disney, since they're now kind of helping produce and put this up on Disney Plus and only have access to like these and the specials, everything else is still like out there on HBO Max and stuff for the old ones. And then obviously, you know, over in the UK, it's all on BBC and whatnot. But yeah, they've dubbed this Season 1. So kind of the third season 1 effectively of Doctor Who, going between the original series, then New Who that started back in 2005, and now New Who in or Nshuti Who in here in 2024/2023 if you count the holiday or the 60th anniversary specials that we talked about earlier in the year. So yeah, why'd we pick it? Because Doctor Who's on Disney Plus now, and that's just fun. That's a good fun time for us. The history lesson here. These particular 3 episodes were originally released May 10th and May 17th. We had basically 2 episodes go up on May 10th, and then the Boom episode went up May 17th, and the rest of the series is going to be running through June 21st over the next month and change. These episodes have a runtime of between 47 and 52 minutes. Also, weirdly, in Season 1 is the Church on Ruby Road, which we already talked about back when we talked about the 60th anniversary specials. But it also makes sense as like the start of the season because it introduces, of course, Ruby and is the first real adventure for the new Doctor. In the Doctor Who timeline of things, we had back in 2021, we had the Series 13 Flux 6 episodes. Then we had the 2022 specials, Eve of the Daleks, Legend of the Sea Devils, and Power of the Doctor. We had the 2023 60th anniversary specials that we talked about last time, The Star Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, and The Giggle, alongside The Church on Ruby Road, which was a bridging of the gap between the 60th anniversary specials and this Season 1. We have here Season 1 happening now in May through June, and then we have the holiday special Joy to the World recently revealed, which will be written by Stephen Moffat, a returning Stephen Moffat, going to be coming back to do that one. And then we will have Season 2, presumably sometime in 2025.
Man, we're getting kind of like the best possible scenario for some of Who stuff because we get RTD, and then we're also getting some Stephen Moffat stuff. It's
a throwback to 2005 all over again,
right?
20 years later. Yep. Yes, our roll call here. Director of these episodes, we had 2 different directors across these 3 episodes. Julie Ann Robinson directed Space Babies and Boom, and then Ben Chessel directed The Devil's Chord. Julie Ann Robinson has assorted directing credits going back to 2000, including episodes of Grey's Anatomy, Weeds, Parks and Recreation, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Bridgerton. And Ben Chessel, who directed The Devil's Chord, has a variety of directing credits going back to 2002, but they seemed to, or they looked like they may all be like UK-centric things, because I did not recognize really any of the other items, but seemingly a good career there. Our writers here, yes, as alluded to, Russell T. Davies is the writer here of Space Babies and The Devil's Chord, as well as the showrunner, once again, here of Doctor Who, having previously written for Queer as Folk, Casanova, the original revival of Doctor Who, which he was also, the showrunner of there, Torchwood, and The Sarah Jane Adventures. And then our writer for Boom, the return of Stephen Moffat, having been the showrunner during the 11th and 12th Doctor eras. He's also the man who brought, who originally was the showrunner for the UK series Coupling, which was my first introduction to him. God, probably like almost 15, 20 years ago now. It was like shortly after high school, a year or two after high school, I think.
It's like
is when I got
British Friends,
introduced.
right?
Yeah, it's basically British Friends, but a little bit. It like when I first watched it, it was British Friends, and now I would probably liken it more to British How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, that's fair.
and or How I Met Your Mother kind of cribs some things from Coupling, because it wasn't just like it's six friends kind of thing, but it plays around with like the format of storytelling a lot more than Friends ever did.
Okay.
And so it's much more in the like How I Met Your Mother kind of vein of sometimes they got wacky and experimental with stuff. Of course, he also was the showrunner for BBC's Sherlock. And aside from being the showrunner during the Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi eras of Doctor Who, and as well as like the 50th anniversary special that we had, he was the writer of many other iconic episodes during Russell T Davis's first run, including The Empty Child Doctor Dances two-parter, The Girl in the Fireplace, maybe most notably Blink, and The Silence in the Library Forest of the Dead two-parter that brought us the introduction of River Song. Our cast of characters here, we have Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, the 15th Doctor here, has also been in Sex Education and the Barbie movie last year. And Millie Gibson is our companion, Ruby Sunday. She, prior to this, had been in long-standing British staple Coronation Street. In Space Babies, we have a few other characters of note. Michelle Greenridge reprises her role as Carla Sunday, who we talked about in the 60th anniversary stuff. She's got credits going back to 2009, including It's a Sin, Cruella, and Venom Let There Be Carnage. Angela Winter, also in there as Cherry Sunday, with credits back to 1981, including EastEnders and Last Christmas. And then kind of the new to the Whoniverse in this episode was Golda Rochevelle, she played Jocelyn Sancerre in Space Babies. And she is notably recognizable as Queen Charlotte in Bridgerton, and the Bridgerton extended universe of spin-offs and stuff. In The Devil's Chord, we have Jinx Monsoon as Maestro, having previously been the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 5 and RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars Season 7. George Capel plays Paul McCartney, having previously appeared in the Doctor Who Flux series there in Chapter 5, Survivors of the Flux, as Alfie. Chris Mason is John Lennon, was previously in Mass Effect Andromeda, as well as Broadchurch, Anthem, again with BioWare, and Riverdale. And Murray Gold makes a little cameo as Murray Gold. And Murray Gold, if you are unaware, is the longtime BAFTA-nominated composer of Doctor Who back in the Davis and Moffat eras. I think he left the show for a little while and then has returned, as many other people on the team has. But yeah, basically like the composer behind a bunch of iconic Doctor Who themes in the last 20 years.
Super fun having him in it.
Indeed. Fun little, like, he pops up, he's there playing a piano in like the kids orchestra scenes, I think. In Boom, we have Joe Anderson playing John Francis Vader. And I was like, why do I know Joe Anderson's name? And it was, because he was in Across the Universe, which I very much enjoyed. Julie Taymor directed Beatles heavy thing from a number of years back. He's also in The Grey, and he was in Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. Kaylin Springle plays Splice Allison Vader. Been in a few other projects going back to 2020. She's a child actor, so not a ton to her name yet. Verada Setu is Mundy Flynn, having recently been discussed in this series on Andor when she appeared in that. She's also in Jurassic World Dominion. And this might be a news to you, Cameron, but it was announced maybe a month or so back that she will be actually a companion starting next season in Doctor Who.
The same character?
So that's where it is unknown. It was a surprise to many that she popped up in this episode
Yeah.
because of the casting news that she was going to be a companion starting next season. But I took a screenshot from like the BBC Doctor Who account where she was quoted as saying, "I'm so excited. The world has finally met Mundy Flynn. It was such a joy to take my first spin in the Whoniverse. I'm so grateful I get to come back for more, but you'll all have to wait and see how that manifests in a new companion role." And that was Varada Setu. Varada. I heard how her name was pronounced in behind the scenes thing and wanted to make sure I got that correct. And then Russell T. Davis did also say, "It's a delight to welcome Varda to Doctor Who earlier than expected, though things are about to get timey-wimey. That's the end of Mundy Flynn's story, so quite how Varda returns will be revealed next year." So maybe they're going to do a was it Gwen Miles kind of thing, a la like she was in Doctor Who and then went to be in Torchwood and was basically like a descendant of her other character.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll like, because they're not going to play with like the Peter Capaldi kind of thing of like, well, the Doctor just took on a new face, or maybe they will. Maybe it'll be like, oh, she's another Time Lord or something and just took this face from the Doctor's past. I don't know. Yeah, so that was a fun little surprise. It'll be interesting to see how she pops back up in the future. And then we have Bhav Joshi, who is Canterbury James Oliphant. Various credits going back to 2014, including last year's Tetris, which I gave as a shout out because I know your deep, deep love of Tetris.
That's accurate, yes.
And then the last one I pull in here is another crossover into the trivia section, which we will also touch on. And I'm curious if you noticed this yourself, Cameron, but we also have an actor, Susan Truist, who plays comms officer Gina Scalzi in Space Babies, the tea lady in The Devil's Chord, and she was most famously here, the ambulance in Boom. So this one performer has been kind of popping up in all 3 episodes so far. She was also in Wild Blue Yonder as Mrs. Meridew in the 60th anniversary things, basically Isaac Newton's like servant woman, and she was a woman at the concert in The Church on Ruby Road in Ruby's first episode, like somebody who screams out to Ruby like, play this song or something like that. So weird little cameo actress who's been just popping up all season long, going back to Church on Ruby Road, and then also had a little pop up in the Dr. Donna side tour to invent Mavity. Had you noticed that at all?
No.
Yeah. So
that cannot. That can't be a coincidence.
It's
that can't.
Especially knowing it, the Russell T. Davis kind of thing. It's like she's very much like the bad wolf of this season. Of she's like, gotta be something. What's going on with her? Why does she keep popping up? What's her deal? And then this is like a more meta thing, but it is also fun. Her name, Susan Twist, and then the iconic end of The Devil's Chord. There's always a twist at the end song. It's like, is that like a meta joke about that even?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. And honestly, it could just be a joke because Russell T. Davies likes this actress. Yep. And so she's just in different roles.
Yep. It
could be that she's like, there's a greater detail to her. It could be, and this is the thing, this immediately popped into my head, is she, so Russell T. Davies very like controversially, there is in the I forgot the name of the episode, but it's David Tennant's last
The End of Time, I think, or no,
not The End of Time. It's the one right before The End of Time, like not the one where he's visiting people a lot. It's the one where he faces off against Rassilon.
Rassilon,
yeah. When he does in that episode, there is one of Rassilon's one of the people with the and she pulls down the hand, smiles at him, and then puts it back up. Mm-hmm. Russell T. Davies, sorry, I probably covered my mouth on some of that. To re-clarify, she covers her face, pulls it down, smiles at the Doctor, then puts her hands back up across her face. Russell T. Davies has like gone on to confirm that in his interpretation of it, that when he wrote, like created it, that scene, this is the Doctor's mother.
Yeah.
My first thought was, I'm like, Russell T. Davies, you son of a bitch. Are you about to be like, hey, everybody, remember what I said that was the Doctor's mother, and everybody's just kind of ignored that since then? I swear to God, if this is Russell T Davies being like, this is the Doctor's mother post, like, so, and like goes back to what I was saying earlier about, there's a difference between the timeless child Doctor, the reset of that Doctor into the weave, and then being reborn as the Doctor as we know them now. It's a whole convoluted thing that like somehow like, I forgot his name. He's the showrunner for the last showrunner.
Chibnall.
Chibnall.
Chris Chibnall.
Chris Chibnall. Yeah. Chibnall.
Chibnall.
There we go. Chibnall. Chibnall very brilliantly like connected tangentially a lot of like old prose stuff to like modern Who when he did that, introduced a timeless child, because there is like I explained it. If you want to get deeper into that, like listen to our last podcast when we talked about the Christmas specials, because I go in detail on what happened and how the timeless child fits into the older Who universe stuff. And so it would be so Russell T Davies to pull this shit.
Yeah. So it was the end of time. End of time, like part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've pulled it up here from Wikipedia. British newspapers, the Daily Telegraph identified the character who's in the credits as the woman in that one, as the Doctor's mother as early as April 2009. Episode's writer, Russell T. Davies, wrote in an email to journalist Benjamin Cook, "I like leaving it open because then you can imagine what you want. I think the fans will say it's Romana or even the Ronnie. Some might say that it's Susan's mother, I suppose. But of course it's meant to be the Doctor's mother." So yeah, that was what he put on there, because she also pops up elsewhere in the episode, like talking to Rose or something like that, or talking to Donna. Talking to Donna. Or is it Donna? I don't know. She shows up somewhere talking to somebody else. Maybe probably not Bernard. Bernard Cribbins was the character name, or was that? Now I'm all Bernard Cribbins as Wilfred. I think she shows up, talks to Wilfred a bit, in like a modern day kind of garb, and then you see that same actress doing the hands in front of the face kind of thing.
So that's like, oh god, it's so, it would be so Russell T Davies to be like, yeah, by the way, but like, why is her face popping up everywhere? It could be that it's like a subliminal thing inside the Doctor's mind, that his mother's face is showing up everywhere. It could also be something different. We don't know. Yeah. But there's no fucking way it's just a coincidence with Russell T Davies.
Of course. Exactly. That's the fun, like in the videos that I've kind of watched about it, it's almost like this speculation on like what's the deal with the Susan Twist cameos is taking on like more of a life than like, what's the deal with Ruby's mom? Is she Ruby's mom? Like, what's that happening? And at what point, like, because there was like in the first couple times, like the Doctor doesn't interact with her, but like he obviously very clearly interacts with her as the ambulance, and he's also kind of talked to her in at least one of her other incarnations. So it's at what point does the character start realizing that he's seeing this face pop up over and over again? And is it like all in his head, or is it a greater mystery that's going on? So it is very much in that vein of like Bad Wolf from the the original Davies era, where it's like, why do we keep saying the words Bad Wolf show up, and then you find out what Bad Wolf is at the end of the season.
Another thing also, I'm trying to remember, what is the cataclysm thing that happens that wipes out half the universe? I'm trying to remember what it's called.
The Flux?
The Flux, thank you. Yeah. I would not be surprised if Russell T Davies saw the opportunity of the Flux, because another thing to bring up here, Susan gets brought up.
Yep.
As in that episode.
Yeah, I have some trivia on that.
Yeah,
too. Yep.
So I'll let you get to that. But like, there's no way the Doctor is dropping, like the Russell T Davies is dropping the Doctor's family stuff all over the place, in conjunction with like also the beings that the Doctor fears the most, these existential gods. I'll get into it when I grade it, but like, it's God, this is so like fun and fascinating. So,
so some other trivia here in Space Babies. The 15th Doctor alters Ruby's phone so she can ring her mother, just as the 9th Doctor did for Rose in The End of the World, with both episodes being the second episodes of their respective companions, and also, of course, both written by Russell T Davies. So it's like that. It's Russell T Davies kind of playing his hits a little bit.
It's a continuity nod for sure.
Yep. When the Doctor and Ruby are looking at the space station readout in Space Babies, the mavity of Pacifico del Rio is shown to be 9.9 meters per second squared, slightly stronger than Earth's 9.8 meters per second squared, and also, of course, continuing the recurring gag that we've had since Wild Blue Yonder, where Newton discovered mavity instead of gravity. I wonder how long they're going to keep just hitting that button, and if they're going to at some point like circle back to it and be like, we need to correct that.
I hope they never do.
Yeah,
I hope they never do. I hope it's a gag for years. So people are like, why is it called mavity? Oh, well, they went back and told Isaac Newton that's called mavity, not gravity.
Yeah, it'll be an Easter egg in like new who 30 years from now. Somebody will say it and they'll be like, here's an Easter egg from Wild Blue Yonder back in 2023. As they celebrate the 21st Doctor.
The 80th anniversary, 80th anniversary of the Doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. Ruby's mention of stepping on a butterfly and the butterfly, which the Doctor then revives, are clear references to the Ray Bradbury short story A Sound of Thunder, in which a time traveler travels into the past and, by stepping on a butterfly, changes the future. And when he returns to the present, that changed was terrifying. And of course, there's also an iconic Simpsons episode where the same thing happens. The story was published in 1953 in the book The Golden Apples of the Sun. So some trivia for the Devil's Chord. Jeremy Lim, who plays the piano teacher Timothy Drake in the cold open, is the son of Roger Lim, who worked as a composer on Doctor Who back in the 1980s. So that was a fun little like keeping it in the family kind of thing. Similarly, Laura June Hudson, who plays the ill-fated elderly woman who gets inspired to start playing Claire de Lune on the piano before being killed by Maestro. She's been a BBC costume designer on the original show, working on 8 stories between 1978 and 1981, and Tom Baker declared her his quote-unquote favorite, loving her operatic style. I can't verify this because I don't know either the song or and I have not seen this elsewhere, but somebody on IMDb put in the trivia, the banishing chord played by Lennon and McCartney is, according to an IMDb trivia note, the same grand chord that closes out the Beatles album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And then here's where we get the rooftop ad for Chris Waits and the Carolers is a nod to the band listened to in An Unearthly Child by the Doctor's granddaughter, Susan. They are in canon yet to reinvent themselves as John Smith and the Common Men. So it goes even deeper than just the mention of, yeah, I'm living over there. I parked the TARDIS in a junkyard and I'm living over there with my granddaughter here in 1963.
Which just shout out to her reaction. She goes, your
Yeah. Yeah. And then some trivia for Boom. This episode marks Stephen Moffat's return to Doctor Who after he left the row of showrunner in 2017. And Villain Guard has been used multiple times by Moffat, going all the way back to his first Doctor Who story with Eccleston in The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. And I pulled in the sequence here. The Doctor identifying Jack's weapon. Sonic Blaster, 51st century. Weapons factory at Villain Guard? Jack Harkness says, you've been to the factories? Once. Well, they're gone now, destroyed. Main reactor went critical, vaporized the lot. Like I said, once. There's a banana grove there now, looking at Rose. And he also tied up his original run with a reference back to Villain Guard in Twice Upon a Time. The reformed Dalek Rusty has taken over the ruins at Villain Guard and uses them as a trap/hunting ground for other Daleks that are trying to kill Rusty. Stephen Moffat, a big fan of bringing in Villain Guard into the greater lore of Doctor Who.
A great stand-in for capitalism in general.
Indeed.
Love that Rusty. I forgot that Rusty uses the Villain Guard place as his trapping ground, his hunting ground for other Daleks.
Yep. So that's what I pulled for trivia. I'm sure there is additional trivia, and some of it we're just going to naturally talk about in the episode, like the references to Susan as just a fun like callback to the history of the character and a way to introduce this new character and a potentially large new audience and on Disney Plus to the history of the show. And in particular, I think that one's interesting because Susan has been brought up so little, I think, in like New Who.
Oh, for
that,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that it is incredibly intentional that like she's getting name dropped right out the gate. And a couple episodes is like the Doctor is embracing the fact that he's a father, he's a grandfather. Like he's much more tied to his family lineage than we got maybe during like the, passing mentions in Eccleston and Tennant and Smith.
I think that's something that definitely is definitely inspired by his his reflections on his own past that we kind of get even more here when he talks about like his the revelations it's still shell shocking to him that he to find out his/her true origins.
Yep.
As the timeless child. So there is a lot going on with that is quite fascinating. And
but I like that even there, in terms of like summarizing 60 years of Doctor Who, he kind of boils even that big revelation down to I'm adopted too kind of thing. Yep. To Ruby. So I think we can talk to we can certainly of course talk across the broad 3 episodes, but just like going episode by episode. What did you think of Space Babies as the first one out, and this weird this is they're kind of pitching this as the season premiere, even though they've they really folded it into Church on Ruby Road as the season premiere. But what did you think of Space Babies as the first episode in this arc, in this run?
My personal feeling, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. The way the Doctor continuously corrects himself to say space babies rather than just babies. Space babies. Constantly is just such a fun way of him being no, I am recognizing that you are intelligent beings.
Yeah. He so another bit of trivia that I didn't pull in but is in here. The Doctor repeatedly corrects himself when he mentions the babies to say space babies. The 12th Doctor censured Clara for putting space in front of words, in Clara's case, space restaurant. Clara retorted by calling the 12th Doctor a pedant, which is one of the titles the 15th Doctor says was used by Time Lords in that episode. So it was a fun, his repeated use. And also, the title of the episode, Space Babies, is spoken 10 times over the course of the episode as part of the dialogue, with his many callbacks and references to Space Babies.
Yeah. I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it as both a kind of Monster of the Week style episode, as well as deepening the relationship that Ruby and the Doctor have with one another, allowing them to both grow in a way that is, natural. I think that they immediately in their first episode together, they immediately have a spark and a chemistry together. And I love the way that this just solidifies it in her being willing to, one, not drop stuff and just be no, I asked you a question. That's not an answer. Her having bigger questions about the universe as a whole. Well, why is this in English? She's oh, it's not here. But giving us these 101 lessons from the Doctor again as a way of being this is a kind of reintroduction of Doctor Who to a broader audience. And so I think that she is such a great, her inquisitive inquiries are done extremely well to give a very basic 101. This is how the Doctor works. This is how this stuff works, rather than in prior introductions to new companions, it's been brushed over a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious how you thought those scenes were handled kind of overall, because we get a few of them over we get them here in Space Babies. We obviously also get them in Boom, talking about I'm over there in 1963, with my granddaughter Susan. I've seen some criticism out there of they feel too exposition dump, and I'm I get the criticism, but also I think they are handled incredibly effectively and efficiently, and in a way that makes sense, because it is something they kind of have to do with every new companion, because every new companion is going to be asking these questions. And so it is the same kinds of beats that we got with Rose, but then also that Martha got, but then also that Donna got, but then also that everybody gets these little things. And you just kind of have to understand that it's part of the nature of it's as much the Doctor introducing his thousands of years of life to a new companion who's going to be going on adventures with him, but also, yeah, like we need to kind of bring any new audience people up to speed, and especially in an episode that is going to be maybe a potential big jumping on point like this, it absolutely makes sense to have those things. So
yeah,
I've seen the criticism, but like none of them bothered me. Like it was I know that this is as much for the audience as it is for the character, and a lot of this is treading, you know, the same kind of ground. But I think for me in particular, because like in the second episode, we do get the like, yeah, I'm right over there with my granddaughter Susan. That was a variation of it that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, not only am I crossing my own time stream right now, I'm referencing the very earliest episodes of this show that people know, and a character that I don't talk about a lot. So like I liked not only how quickly it brings the audience up to speed, but also especially the like idea of talking about his daughter and talking about his past and talking about maybe even the trauma of being adopted, and also like all the Time Lords are dead kind of thing. Like being as open about that, also does a great job tying into the like Doctor giving himself therapy that we got in the bi-generation of Tennant going off and Ncuti kind of continuing on the journey. Is like he is the most maybe like emotionally open of the
100%.
modern Doctors we've had, because of
being able to split your
happened.
trauma off to let it deal with itself is such a massive like relief for him. But it doesn't change the fact that it's still traumatic. Like the scars are still there. Not that, but before the Doctor knew everything that happened with Susan, but now because the flux didn't just destroy space, it was destroying time as well. So he doesn't know what happens to Susan anymore, because the flux could have invaded at some point and eliminated her from the timeline on some earlier point than what he originally knew. In the prose, she stays behind on a planet, in one of the final episodes, like with a character that's introduced in the final season of the first Doctor, and ends up marrying him and having a kid and like living a full life. But
yeah, I've seen that in the expanded lore, but it is like there's always the like, okay, but how canon is that in the grand scheme of things?
It's been brought up that that is also like an alternate timeline to Earth's history now, because of decisions that were made in other pros and stuff. So it's like its own sectioned off timeline. I think very similarly to
it's like Star Wars Legends canon.
Star Wars Legends. I would also compare it to the timeline that Susan is locked in is very similar to kind of the parallel universe that the angels trap people in.
Okay.
In that the Doctor can't go there and interact with it. It's cut off from him. And so like that.
That's not a parallel universe thing. It's like a quantum loop.
It's a quantum.
Like she's still there in the same Earth. Like Amy and Rory are still there in the same Earth. He just can't get back to them. It's always like what if he goes back to like New Jersey in that time frame and then just walks across the river? Is he going to be like that's always you can always pick plot holes in it, but
for sure. That's
maybe so. I would think alternate universe more like where Rose and the
very similarly, I would actually
Crisis Doctor.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between. I think those two examples. But that is like a thing that happens, and then so that's where like she got left off in the expanded lore.
Yeah.
But because of the flux, this is them introducing, hey, anything can happen. We can change anything because the flux changed everything.
Yeah. And they've always kind of played fast and loose.
Sure.
They can change anything anyway.
This just gives such a great way of being like, hey, we're going to introduce Susan. It's not to say like, oh yeah, that other stuff didn't actually happen. It happened, but now how did the flux interfere with that?
Yeah.
And I think that is such a, like they're bringing this up over and over. And in my head, I kind of have a thought as to why and a theory, but I'll save that towards the end.
Okay.
About my prediction of what I like about kind of my larger prediction on things.
Yeah. I mean, there have been a lot of theories I've been seeing make the rounds, like maybe Ruby is Susan or something like that, or maybe Ruby's mom was Susan and like the Doctor is now with his great-great-granddaughter or something like that. And we'll see, how that all shakes out or whatever.
Just great-granddaughter, not great-great-granddaughter.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Which wouldn't be surprising because in the prose, the Doctor has a great grandson
Mm-hmm.
who, instead of going off with the Doctor, goes to travel across Europe backpacking instead. Sure. That's a fun little like literature piece of like the Doctor trying to like convince his great grandson to come hop through time and space with him, and his great grandson's like, I'm cool.
I've got my own adventures.
Yep.
Yeah. So back to Space Babies.
Space Babies.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I love the little babies. I love the
think
terrible
of the
CGI.
CGI?
I love the
Okay,
terrible CGI on their mouths. It made it super cute. One of the main baby, I forgot his name. Eric looks like I think his name's not Rupert. It's something from Ted Lasso. He's the like accountant for Ted Lasso.
Yeah, I know exactly what
baby
you're
looks identical to him, and I don't know if it's on purpose or I just happened to like started like watching the final season of Ted Lasso recently. And so, like, I don't know if that's just like the parallels between the two, but they look identical.
Mm-hmm.
It looked
Higgins.
like Higgins. Yeah, it looks like they took Higgins, babyfied him,
Yep.
and then put him in Space
It's
Babies.
definitely like it's the eyes and the hair.
Yeah,
It's
the eyes and the hair, just
little
like
short, kind of like clean cut combed kind of hair.
It is just, and the eyes, this like those big, bright, wide eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I loved it. I love the idea of the boogeyman. I love that the Doctor points out the boogeyman's one of the children. You can't just eject the boogeyman because he's like. He has a purpose. And also, love the Doctor changed the vocal patterns for the boogeyman, so he's now a doggy.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The whole idea of like, also I love it. The Doctor's like, why was I afraid? Like I've faced so many different monsters, and everyone is like, and my thought is like, yeah, Doctor, why are you afraid? And then he goes, the hurt signal that it is speaking at is the tone of fear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, once again, bring up the fact that the Doctor also like hears on like different wavelengths than human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so like being able to like isolate that and figure it out. So cool. Bringing that up in a little like side tangent way. But also just, yeah, I freaking loved it. It was a great way to introduce a lot of the basic concepts, monster, like once again, showing that like, you know, this is how you do things well, giving us a story about immigrants, a story about like, birth, like the right to life and birth, and
and how quickly people who really want the right to life will abandon it.
Yeah,
like the little line from Ruby of like, or from Ruby and the nanny being like, they spend all that money to like birth the kids and then don't care what to do with them. It's so cruel. It's so inhumane. It's it's unfathomable. It's like, no, it's not that hard to imagine.
No. And then also like. Doing a Monster of the Week episode, doing two major heavy themes, and like, but also making it work and not beating you over the head with it. It's done in a way that is poignant and intelligent, and in a way that like you and I have had the discussion before about like Chibnall's biggest flaw as a showrunner is that. So
we were saying that, or like before we dive into that, I have realized that like. The issues that I always kind of use in my examples of that, I associate with Chibnall, but in going through this, like, those are Moffat era. They might have been written by Chibnall. I haven't like dug into that, but yeah, the two big episodes that I always like really point to and be like, I hated how like over the head I was hit with the message on these was in the Capaldi Moffat stuff. So yeah. Oops.
So fair enough. So to revise my statement a bit. Done brilliantly well. The way that they kind of like bring it out, it's done in such a brilliant way to get the messages across that, hey, life is life. And when something's alive, you can't just discard it and just destroy it because it scares you or you have a problem with it. But at the same time, also being like, hey, like just because something is capable of being born doesn't mean that it like you can just abandon it. Like if you want the right to life, if you want these things to be alive, you have to take care of them. You can't just abandon them. Also, it brings up like the idea of like citizenship and rights and like refugees. You can't be a refugee. They can't come get you if you're a refugee. You have to go to them. And also shout out to the farting spaceship.
Yeah.
One of the best things that when it happened, I busted my goddamn gut.
I was like, I know how Cameron's going to respond to this when I watched it, and you did not disappoint. Yes,
the idea of
as I joked, the man who brought us the Slovene and farting aliens on Downing Street, also coming back real quick and hard with a farting spaceship.
Oh, it was the best. It was the absolute best. Also, the idea that the ship was breaking down because of all the dirty nappies.
Mm-hmm.
I freaking loved it. What a great episode.
Yeah. I'm pulling up those episodes that I highlighted before. Yeah, no, Chris Chibnall, not the writer on either of those episodes that I didn't like. They were both Stephen Moffat specials.
Well, there you go, Stephen Moffat.
And among his other writers, but yeah.
Which is weird because like we'll get into Boom in just a moment, but like Boom has done so well.
It very much comes down to like when he was working as showrunner, I think he gets a little more heavy-handed than when he can kind of pop in, do an episode, and then pop away.
Yep. So starting with the next episode,
that's the next episode being The Devil's Chord. As the biggest Beatles hater I know, I want to hear your thoughts on this episode, Cam.
Yep. So for anybody who doesn't know, I don't like the Beatles. I don't think the Beatles and part of the problem, and I've since reflected a lot on this over my 34 years of life, of like why I don't like the Beatles. And the reason I don't like the Beatles is because I love all the bands that the Beatles inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I listen to the Beatles, it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It is not reductive. It is, or something.
It's probably reductive in terms of like, it is the earlier version of what you
redundant.
like.
Sorry. I was thinking redundant.
Oh, redundant. Okay.
I think actually reductive was the right word that I was looking for.
That's what I'm saying. I think that is probably a little bit more the right word in that, like you like the things that they inspired more than the thing that originated.
Yeah.
Like you think there has been growth in the genre, but you can also see that like, oh yeah, they were like the seeds.
Yeah. I think that especially as somebody who like, for this also part of it is also I've come around a lot on, and I'm going to say this, boy band music when it comes to like, as I got older, I kind of like, peeled off my jaded scales when it comes to, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys.
Washed out the black hair dye that you had from your emo phase, and
never actually had an emo phase. I was a proto hipster,
right?
Which is way worse, way worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. When it comes down to it, like I look back on, I'm like I see them being kind of the genesis of several different movements in music, whether it's kind of like the movement of rock and roll. Kind of like being the advent and inspiration for bands like, the Rolling Stones, Queen, several other bands that they would later inspire. I think that a lot of the idolation that people have for the Beatles is also like a point of frustration for me. Like
other people like it, so I can't.
Other people love it.
Yeah.
Other people love it so much that when you're like, I just don't care for it or I don't like it, the reaction is so polarizing that you immediately are just like, well, now I'm going to double down and be like, no, I hate it. Yeah. They suck. They're the worst.
And where do you fall with Queen?
Queen, I love Queen. They're the best.
Right, you're that person for
I am
Queen.
that person.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody said, oh, I don't like Queen, I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, that's your choice. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand it. I think that Queen's the greatest band of all time. I just don't know how you don't like Queen, but it's fair. If it's fine. Like what you like, don't like what you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also not going to gatekeep somebody being like, well, are you a real Queen fan? If you like Queen, that's great. Cool. I feel like being not a fan of there's some weird anti or inverted gatekeeping that happens with the Beatles, where if you don't like the Beatles, they're like, how can you not like the Beatles? People have a million reasons why you should like the Beatles, and none of them fit for me. Granted, I like some of Paul McCartney's solo work quite a bit. But and my biggest issue always will come down to John Lennon. I found out I found out reasons why I don't like John Lennon as a human being, versus him as a musician also was fine. They inspired a lot of people, and that's great. Coming to Abbey Road, the big deal being made about the Beatles here. I was surprised it wasn't more of a big deal. They're the ones that find the Devil's Chord and do all of that. Okay.
Yeah. Especially because of the teases and the marketing for the episode, it was very much like, oh, we thought the Beatles were going to be way bigger and kind of thing. We're going to Abbey Road. We're going to see the Beatles. And yeah, when you put it in the context of, well, these are the Beatles that exist in a world where music has been robbed from the world because of the big bad.
Yeah. The love and passion of music is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so music is bland and boring. And the fact that like,
and the Beatles are singing about a dog.
Yeah. There's no like poetry to music.
Mm-hmm.
And you have them talking to Paul and John, and Paul and John both being like, it's embarrassing being a musician. I don't think you understand. Like, it's embarrassing. I want to finish my contract, get out of here, and like go back to Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's such a weird thing to see.
Yeah.
But also on another level, like I love how brilliant that is because
it's playing on like what we know of the Beatles and very much being like, you guys aren't the Beatles.
Yeah. And then like finding
how twisted is this world now the Doctor has a mystery to solve.
Yeah.
Like what caused this?
And I think that's fantastic. I really enjoy that aspect of this episode. Even with the Beatles being an aspect of this episode, I think is super beneficial because even though I'm not a fan of the Beatles are such an important point in musical history,
mm-hmm.
And especially in modern music history. Like I said, they inspired all the bands I love.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, like they are an important part of musical history, and them not being part of it anymore, or them finding like being we secretly love music deep down in the bottom of our hearts, but like we don't, like society says no. Sort of like aspect of music is, and being musicians does hit a chord with me. Pun not intended, but also semi-intended now. Pun post intended. There we go. I like it struck a chord with me in which I like, as somebody who I've had passions and things that I love that I've like hidden from the world because they like, I'm going to say they weren't socially acceptable within my circle of living.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that they weren't largely socially acceptable. Although straight up being like an anime fan, a fan of anime in junior high and high school was like a no-go. Like you could not be open about it.
Mm-hmm.
The closet weebs that existed like at my high school where we all knew that we all loved anime, but we all had to downplay that we loved anime was a real thing.
Yeah.
Because the people who were out and about it were cringe as hell.
Well, I remember I think often back to the idea, just because this is how my stupid mind works, I wrote an essay in like, I don't know, sophomore, junior English or something like that. And it was like, write an essay about a collection that you have. And I wrote my essay on my collection of video games, and like was being open and like embracing that kind of thing. And we had it like peer read by like other members in the class kind of thing. And there was a girl in the class who just like, that became the thing that when she would see me, she would kind of like poke fun at me about. And it was just like,
fuck you.
Right. Like it was whatever. She kind of had like a little bit of mean girl energy and was like, whatever. Like we don't engage enough that becomes a pain point for me in my life. But it's clearly still a thing that I think about and remember, 25 years later. It was very much like even then, like gaming or anime, like all of the things that like started to really blow up and kind of take over pop culture. And obviously also like we found each other, we found friends in the like-minded space and kind of thing. Like we found our community of the people who love these weird things that we love. I mean, like Doctor Who was the same kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Right? Especially like being an American, like who knew Doctor Who or like liked Doctor Who pre-New Who was wild. But then also even like being an American who liked New Doctor Who when it came in 2005 was like, I have like a couple pockets of people that I've found like friendship with through Facebook or something like that. But
yeah, for me, it was a matter of like, this show popped up. I think it was on G4. I was watching it on G4 TV and I was like, this show's really cool. And nobody in my life knew anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, so I felt like really alone about it. Another reason why like sometimes I just don't talk about the things I love is because I'm guarded about it because I don't want people like making fun of the things I love. I love those things.
Mm-hmm.
So getting this sort of like, music is this for these people struck a chord with me. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then on top of that, you have a fucking badass drag queen as the maestro.
Yeah. Jinx Monsoon just coming in and immediately like matching and like in some ways exceeding the Neil Patrick Harris energy that is like, they are of the same pantheon of the Toymaker kind of thing.
This queer ass pantheon.
They are the child of the Toymaker, and just like hell yeah, like
It's so good.
It was such a fun character and such a fun like potential recurring character. That I'm like, I hope we see more of this character. This portrayed by Jinx Monsoon or any other number of people could come in and like match this energy, I think, in the future. And it is just like a fun, it's, hey, the Doctor Who has its own kind of Joker character again. You know, it's we don't always need to fall back to the Master well. We can play with this now. Look at the
Toymaker, look at the Maestro, like look at this other pantheon we're going to be exploring in future episodes. One, I love that both we got the Toymaker, now we got the Maestro, both played by prominent queer, iconic actors and performers.
In the vein of trivia on this one, 1925 is when Maestro kind of appears, and that's also when the Neil Patrick Harris Toymaker like started doing stuff with the giggle. And obviously, we get a fun callback to the giggle when Maestro comes out of the piano, and the Doctor terrified by that. And to your point earlier about like, the bi generation was still trauma. That like I fought these people before and it split my soul in two. I can't do that again.
That was such a great moment where it's like, oh, it was painful to be bi-generated. I love that aspect of it. One, I talked about it in detail in our last when we talked about the Giggle episode in the last podcast that we did on Doctor Who, for that D+ show. The Toymaker in prose and in literature has long since been the Doctor's most terrifying enemy to the Doctor. The Doctor has, from the era of the first Doctor, has a sort of like deep trauma from an incident that occurred with the Toymaker and two of his classmates in school. And it carries over now even to this point where it's like, my last encounter with these gods split me in two. Like I cannot emphasize enough to you how scary these people are. They are not like, I know we just faced the boogeyman, but this is something I'm actually afraid of. Like, it's so good.
I just had the thought that like, the Toymaker is having their Thrawn moment where it's like, Thrawn was like a big bad in Star Wars extended canon and stuff, but they weren't really there. They were there if you were like super nerdy and had read all the books and stuff like that.
Or you watched like the first Doctor's episode with the Toymaker. That's the only
exactly.
That's the only on camera depiction of the Toymaker we've ever had. The Toymaker's true horror came out in prose, and then we get it with Neil Patrick Harris taking on that role.
It was a very big thing of like Russell T Davies coming back and like bringing the Toymaker into the 60th anniversary as like a big bad of like, this is a character we haven't seen since the first Doctor kind of thing, and the idea of like paying homage to the history of the show, and solidifying that this is a character who has, I mean, as we've seen, has completely changed the game and the rules of Doctor Who, in that we have so many fourth wall breaks. Most notably in this episode, we have a ton of fourth wall breaks that are glorious and delicious pretty much every time they happen.
God, so good.
But then also like we have the twist at the end song where it's like, what? Like this makes no sense in like a normal show kind of thing. But now that the Toymaker has like added play into the world, it's a thing that can happen. We obviously got the goblins, the introduction of more like fantasy things, space babies. It's the continuation of like the ramification, the effects that the ripples that the Toymaker's presence in this world has like introduced to open up a whole new avenue of stories that they can play with in Doctor Who itself.
And the Maestro, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg from what from what the previews kind of are telling us from it. This idea that you've introduced gods, which aren't gods in the sense of like Judeo-Christian, or the sense of like even like Greek or, our current mythos. It's like, what does it mean when you have a firm understanding of like X-dimensional physics? What does a god mean to you? Like, what does a god mean to the Doctor? And it is these terrifying beings that really see our dimension, our universe as a place of play. Oh, I'm the Maestro. Music belongs to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to devour everyone's, and if you ever show a passion for music, I'm going to murder you with music.
I'm going to appear in every possible reflection in a great shot.
I'm going
to take music upon myself. I'm going to play the theme of this show, winking at the camera as we go into the opening credits sequence. And then I'm going to let that kind of come back out via the jukebox that we have now in the TARDIS. So like the use of I forget what it's called when it's like the music is like in the world of the show and not just like a soundtrack that we the audience are hearing.
Yeah.
Whatever that term is.
Also, I'm going to use music notes to like.
I'm going to hijack the TARDIS because the TARDIS makes noise. It does its dumb little wheezing thing. So I'm going to like play the TARDIS music to hijack your TARDIS, and you can only go back to 1963.
Brilliant. Just so brilliant.
We're going to do our fun little like Devil Went Down to Georgia, music off moment. I love like among a series of great like sound sequences. I'm a huge sucker for when they just rob sound of it, and the doctor
white
does
noise.
his one trick, and we hear the white noise, and then just silence as we see Maestro trying to sing, trying to scream, throwing a thing on the ground to shatter glass, and like making
using the
all
tuning
sorts of
fork
sound
to try to get some noise, like exploring that.
Yeah.
And then
finally being able to like overpower the doctor's trick by using the tuning fork and creating a visual representation of sound to bring sound back into the moment when they put it in the water.
Once again, breaking that fourth wall, breaking that fourth dimensional like aspect of the Doctor. Like the Doctor's only powerful in third dimension, like up to 3 dimensions. Once he gets into the 4th dimension and he's playing with concepts and ideas, that he starts like he's out of his he's just out of his depth on that. And it's awesome seeing the Doctor out of his depth on anything, because that's when you get to see kind of that scrappy element of the Doctor where he's like, aha, there's a chord. I just have to find it. And the Maestro just being like, in the multitudes of chords, how are you going to find the chords to seal me? And getting so far into it. And then, and like the representation of those like pure white, music notes. And it's so...
I mean, even that is like, again, like the fact that we, the audience, and the characters are seeing staves of music and like all of these musical progression, and they're being used to lock doors. They're being used to hold Ruby up in the air and whatnot. It's like, okay, yeah, this is a world that doesn't make sense. This is not a thing you would have had in, 10 years ago Doctor Who, because it breaks even the rules of science fiction that they had established. You wouldn't have seen like a musical note visualization holding somebody up in the space. So there's an element of like, yay for them playing with different, sides of science fiction and stuff like that. And then also yay for Disney throwing a little bit more money to them
absolutely.
to be able to do some of this stuff. Yeah,
thank goodness for the Disney budget, because man, they have really stepped up on their production levels. Like, goddamn, I'm impressed. I've been impressed by it. Even our little monster of the week wasn't a cheap, like little knockoff. Like, shout out to the Dalek, of course, being a trash can with a plunger on it. But like, it's great that we don't have to have that as the aspect of it. I love how abstract they're getting with it. I talked to you the other night about the things I loved about Moffat's was when Moffat really played with abstract and really played with concept with the Doctor, with things like, the mystery of Trenzalore, the Doctor's name, like all these things that are like ideas and concepts that mean much more than the actual answer of what they are. And getting that in spades here with Russell T Davies has just been phenomenal. The Toymaker coming in has really, like you said, it opened up that aspect, that avenue of play, that avenue of fantasy that we get. So
I think going back to kind of the opening of this episode a little bit, not necessarily like going back to like the 1925 stuff. Oh, that like it was just a great introduction to that character. This guy who's like teaching this dumb little kid and being like, "Oh, you want something fun? All right, well, here's a fun thing that we can talk about."
What about the Devil's Chord?
The Devil's Chord, a tritone, bum bum bum, kind of, and boom, the thing, and you're talking to my son Henry Arbinger, who of course we also then get at the end popping back up in the, there's always a twist at the end theme. So it's like, oh yeah, what does that mean?
Harbinger. Yep.
Yeah. But more so like the like Ruby being like, oh, yeah, I want to go to the Beatles, and like that being an exciting like first location that she goes to in
also
terms of
finding
like
out
time
her
travel.
mom's gay. Because her mom, the reason she loves the Beatles is because her mom's old girlfriend had records and vinyl.
Maybe that's what they were going for. I didn't read that as a like romantic girlfriend so much as I read that as a like my girlfriend's yeah, it might be that. I don't know. I more so to that was reading was Ruby's song that she plays that she wrote for her friend
whose girlfriend
whose heart was broken by a girl. I think Ruby was the girl that broke her heart.
Oh.
But also the I think eidetic is the term I was looking for earlier. The music that is in the world. The song that Ruby plays there is Ruby's theme. Like she was playing her own theme in the world of the show.
Yeah.
It was just another cool vibe to that whole thing. But I love, she's like, wait, we're in the 60s. What about our clothes? And I love they have their little runway moment in the like wonderfully new designed TARDIS interior.
I mentioned to you, I was
thing.
like, it's crazy how good this TARDIS looks like in the aspect of the 60s.
Yeah.
God, it's so good.
No, eidetic is eidetic memory. That's wasn't the right term I was thinking about.
I wasn't going to call you out on it because I didn't recall what you were trying to reference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm looking for the word that is like, oh, it's music, but it's music in the real world that of the universe that we're.
I do not know that word, so I apologize. I'd help you out if I could.
It's something I've heard a couple times recently, and if I like it hit me, it would come to me. But yeah, it's not doing it today, because I've like watched it in the context of these episodes. But yeah, so I love the look of Ruby and the Doctor in this, just wonderful. I love that. And we see this kind of across these episodes as well as the first the Church on Ruby Road episode, as well as like what we've seen in trailers. I love that unlike other Doctors, this one isn't like confined to one wardrobe look.
Yes.
Which we talked about this, I think, maybe during our 60th anniversary stuff, or maybe we just talked about it off camera or whatever. But it's like, well, it makes sense that like other Doctors would have had that like unique unifying look to like create that as like, well, this is how we will always be able to pick that character out of a crowd. And it's like, well, when your Doctor is now a black man of Rwandan, I believe, descent, it's like, yeah, he stands out among the other characters in this pantheon. That can be his identifying characteristic. He doesn't have to be confined to one set of clothes.
Although, to be fair, he does wear his outfit in Space Babies is his outfit from the 60th Christmas special, just without the jacket.
Sure. I mean, yeah, he has a outfit that he is maybe like circling back around to more, but it has been like a different look in each.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
In each episode.
In the first one episode,
compared to just always like a blue or black, trench coat or whatever.
Well, we see him with Gadawa is wearing like a skirt or a kilt.
Yeah.
In the Christmas episode when we are first introduced to them.
He's dancing in the club.
Yeah, dancing in the club. Is later wearing kind of their iconic outfit, I think, which is the brown jacket with the like multi-striped shirt, and then those slacks. And then we get the 60s episode. And then, so for 2 episodes, for the majority of those 2 episodes, one entire episode, and then one for the majority of that first episode, wearing the same outfit. And then is wearing at the beginning of this episode and then transfers over to that 60s look. Mm-hmm. So I think has that standard look, that standard iconic look, but rather than needing to consistently wear it every time, like you said, circling back to that outfit, yes.
Yeah.
But also wearing a variation of it, not always wearing the coat on top of everything else. Being willing, and I think we saw that a little bit with David Tennant's return as the 14th Doctor with being willing not to have a coat on all the time, wearing a bit more of that vest with rolled up sleeves.
Yeah. Diegetic is
There
the
you
word
go.
I was thinking of. And also shout out to how stupid Google's AI is, because I Googled music that exists in the universe of a fiction. And the AI overview, music that exists in the universe of a fictional world, is called in-universe music. It is also known as diegetic music or source music. And I'm like, I was not looking for in-universe music, you stupid AI. AI in quotes.
Yeah, we before we started recording, we had a fun discussion about how to make cheese pizza, the cheese stick to pizza, by adding Elmer's glue to it.
I love that I've already seen it pop up. UDM14.com is Google that, like, it's basically like it auto adds in that and UDM equals 14 tag at the end of a Google search that pulls out all of the non-Google search bullshit. So it pulls out like the AI, it pulls out, I think, a lot of the like the sponsored stuff that you'll see. I saw that like making the rounds yesterday. I was like, good on that. Good on those people for already being like, fuck you, Google. Nobody wants this. Yeah. Anyway, diegetic music being the term I was looking for there. And I love how that's used in this episode. And again, like going to this beautiful song that Ruby plays, to like, and the visuals that we see corresponding to it, like the people who remember, like, or like for the older people, the people who remember what music was like and what the world was like when music was a loved thing. And then for the newer people, kind of like the awe in terms of like, what is this thing I'm hearing? Like it was almost like my parents don't let me listen to this, kind of vibes. And so, yeah, shout out to that. And as we touched on already, like, I really love the rooftop scene of the Doctor and Ruby kind of talking and yeah, the name drop of, yeah, I'm living over there with my, granddaughter Susan, very much being like, okay, it's not a coincidence that like you're bringing that up and openly bringing that up. I think we will probably see, and then it becomes do we see? I don't know if the actor who originally played Susan is still alive.
I don't know if she is.
Maybe not. Like I believe. In one of the things I was seeing, I believe she was she attended some of the 60th anniversary like celebrations and stuff. So she might still be around, and maybe it is a like thing that they're leading up to a little cameo for her, or maybe it is we're gonna see like a new iteration of Susan in the same way that we've got the actor who played was it Finch? No, actor who played. What's his butt in Harry Potter and in Game of Thrones and stuff. The guy who's been playing Hartnell in recent Doctor Who stuff. Like he's been acting as Richard, as
William Hartnell.
William Hartnell.
Carol Ann Ford is still alive.
Okay.
Granted, she's 83 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
So they might recast that.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting to see where they will end up going with this.
She recently did some narration work for some Doctor Who stuff.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. I think she's been doing some of the like some stories and stuff.
She has not done anything since 2013, so she might be just like fully retired.
Oh yeah,
she did stuff for the 50th anniversary special stuff. Was what she last did. Mm-hmm. So does not look like she's active right now. But who's to say? We'll see.
The other thing I think making the round, so they in addition to like the big 60th anniversary episodes that they did some like smaller things that were like I forget what they call them, but they were like little small scenes in a TARDIS, but it was like TARDISes across the generations or whatever, and it was like past doctors and past companions kind of like crossing the streams a little bit and interacting, and there was notably one that seemed like it was going to be involving Susan and did not. So it was like maybe they are kind of holding her back for something else. Mm-hmm. At least that's I've not seen a ton of those, but based on some of the other like explainer things, that's what I've seen as like a theory going out there. Like,
she recently did interviews about the 60th anniversary.
Yeah.
But she's not been involved in anything. She just might also just be too old at this point. She's 83.
Sure. I mean,
she could just be done.
They had Bernard Cribbins back for the 60th anniversary stuff as Wilfred, before he he died like a year later, but he was just too unwell to come back and do the full final episode, but he did come back for a little bit. then passed away sometime after that, sometime between the filming and then the airing, of course.
I think the biggest issue would just be like, okay, well, what do you want her to do? Like, what
Sure.
what era of Susan are we talking about? Does this need to be a younger Susan?
And also, it's a character 60 years later. How much for an audience, even an audience that like watched the original stuff, how much are they going to be able to easily identify? Oh yeah, that's the same actress versus bringing in somebody new or something like that. It'll be interesting to see how they go. But
I'm excited no matter how they do it, because whether it's Carol Ann Ford, whether it's somebody else, I'm excited just to see Susan pop back up.
All that to say, if they do it, I hope they do. I think in an era where they are kind of treating this as like a fresh new start, but also still honoring and celebrating the legacy of 60 years. I think a nod back to that character and that like the first companion would be an interesting little like button on the first season that we're here with. And I will say, having seen some like images and leaked things of like the final bit of this season, they're definitely not shying away from other early era things.
Cool. I'm excited.
So and like variations of those early era things. So we'll talk about that more when we do like a season wrap up, I'm sure. But diving into then Boom, unless you have any final thoughts on Devil's Chord before we hop over.
I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. I cannot stress enough how much I have been loving this. So let's carry on to Boom.
Going real quick, going back to Space Babies and specifically the chemistry between Ruby and the Doctor, I think was immediately great from Church on Ruby Road, and then becomes better, more solidified from some of the moments you highlighted, as well as a moment that I know got you a lot was the realization of the bogeymen and while Ruby is covered in snot, and like the way the Doctor plays with her and teases her about that, like just pitch perfect, like back and forth between those two characters, and yeah, a ton of fun. They are a younger and hip Dr. Donna kind of vibe and chemistry, and I love it. It's great. Then we move on to Boom, where we get effectively a bottle episode, but now with Disney budget, bottle episodes don't have to take place in quarries. They can take place on the volume in a digital quarry. And they can look as crazy sci-fi as this one does.
Sorry, it doesn't have to take place in a quarry, and it's like like all those bottle episodes just coming back, just hitting me.
Yep. They've touched on so many quarries. I watched
Doctor Who single-handedly keeping the Chord business.
I watched one of the behind the scenes things on that episode, and they touched on the idea that like they did go out and like spec out a location. They found a location in, I don't know, somewhere around Cardiff probably. But they had a spot that they were gonna like look at and see, but then they were like, we really want, like, we're gonna be in this crater for a few weeks of filming, so we want somewhere that is more climate controlled. And so they ultimately kind of spec'd out, well, here's how much we think it'll cost to build it, rather than like take the whole crew out there or whatever. So they ended up building it in a space, basically in the volume, or in a volume, and then they kind of like they have like they're interviewing like the production designer or something, is like, yeah, and like 3 of the days we were filming, it rained terribly, and it would have been a nightmare and stuff. And so I was definitely patting myself on the back for on those days, and kind of trying to not do it. I told you so. And I was like, yeah, but I love that. Yeah, this era with the additional like Disney money behind them, they can do what would have in seasons past been a crater. A crater in a quarry kind of thing, but they can give it a little bit more of a more unearthly feel to it.
Yeah.
And really play with like the sci-fi-ness of it. But yeah, Boom. What did you think of Boom there, Cam?
A fantastic ball episode. Touches also on just like themes and aspects of this Doctor and Ruby, their relationship. Playing deep, like each episode hit on the mystery that is like who is Ruby like Road, like who is she, like what is she?
Yeah, we haven't touched on it, but like the fact that like the snowflakes like coming, it's another thing that is like the world is broken open, and like Ruby just thinking back on her memory, and like also like the memory changed back in Space Babies of like the doctor seeing the woman, and the woman now did a different thing when talking to Ruby about it, and snow is falling in their discussion of it, and then snow falls in the TARDIS at the end of the episode. Snow falls here in this planet on Boot. Like something weird is going on with Ruby, and then she's like defying the laws of this universe as well.
Well, I think that it definitely plays into whatever's going on with the Maestro, but this is also where my theory is coming into play. I think Ruby might be the child of the Crisis Doctor and Rose.
Oh, okay.
That's like a theory that I've had for the last couple of days. I have not put too much thought into it. It has just surfaced stuff. It's like, why are we replaying a lot of these Rose beats? Why, like, what's going on here? Like, Russell T Davies also bringing back like older concepts, older people. It's like him. Oh, I'm over there with my granddaughter. In a way, the Crisis Doctor is a pseudo child of Tennant's Doctor / a variation of himself. It's a weird aspect, and it's not a clone.
We keep saying Crisis Doctor. I think Meta Crisis Doctor is the term that the the Who fandom uses.
So this entire aspect of it, and that's who Rose ends up with. She stays in that that alternate dimension, that alternate reality, timeline, whatever it ends up being. So that's a thought that I had. I'm like, are we replaying these Rose beats just because Russell T Davies is going back to his classics on it, or is there a greater meaning behind it? And my theory is like, I think there might be a greater meaning behind it. This aspect and focus on family, the idea that the Doctor is traveling with his daughter / granddaughter, who's also like the daughter of like the love that got away from him. Like it's a whole complicated thing, but it gives credence to that. Now, alternatively, she could also just be a like member of this new pantheon, like a new member of the pantheon. Like there's a whole mess of things that this could be. It could because we don't know. The toy box the lid to the toy box has been blown wide open.
Yeah.
It could be anything. But my first theory about it, it's like, why are we hitting these beats on family? Why are we doing this? What is her connection to it? Is she having this impact on the universe because she's not from this universe? Is she like, what are the aspects of it? Or is she a member of this new pantheon? Is it a matter of the snowflakes of memories and like the music that her earliest memory of music is
Carol of the Bells.
Yeah, Carol of the Bells.
The song hidden deep within her.
Yeah. Like the origin of her song in her heart, the deepest section of her heart is that Carol of the Bells. And it leads to so many different thoughts and aspects. Like, why were the goblins obsessed with taking her as a baby? Was it just revenge for her thwarting them in the present? Like, what are these aspects of her circumstances? And it's just this massive mystery that could go in a million different directions, and I freaking love it.
Yeah, I don't read. I mean, it's a fun theory, and if it happens, then yeah, shout out to you for calling it. I don't see her as a child of the Metacrisis Doctor and Rose, and I don't think she's connected to Rose, in part because we got Rose as Donna's daughter. Like, we got that Rose character as
the homage to Rose,
the homage to Rose, and like that was a trigger for Tennant's character. And was like a nice little button to, as with pretty much all of his little farewells, he got like that little moment. We got like, in the 50th anniversary when he popped back in, we got Bad Wolf Girl. We got, so I think we got a recent and also a Davies variation of Rose in Doctor's Daughter, the Donna's daughter. And I believe some light future spoilers. I believe she is like, well, if you watch trailers, she pops up in the trailer, so she's going to be somewhere else. Like that Rose is going to pop up somewhere else in the season. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Billie Piper's Rose somehow does come back into this. The other thing that like is kind of a wrinkle, I think, in a lot of theories about like who's Ruby's mom, who was that woman that we saw, is like, regardless who she is, we are predisposed not to like her because she's giving up a child like on a church. And like what kind of mom does that is the like, so I don't think it can be like a character we know and like already.
That's fair. I think it's also a possibility that it's this is also a story of like parents stepping up, so to speak. Like the idea of like Ruby's when Ruby talks about her mom, she meant like my mother and father, but when she says mom, she's talking about her adopted mom.
Yeah. And going back to the Space Babies episode of like the doctor saying, I can take you anywhere, but I can't take you to that church on that night. We can't cross that stream, which again, a repeated beat from Rose, which then we broke, specifically around a church even.
That's what dude, this is what I'm saying. There's so many correlations with it. I don't think I'm crazy for having this theory. I think other people probably have it as well. It's just why. Yeah. I think is the biggest question. But I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah. All that to say, I loved Ruby's response there in contrast to Rose's response of like Rose insists effectively to needing to go there, to Ruby being like, we are going to go see my mom. We're going to go see her on Christmas. And we go see Cherry and have a wonderful time with them. And also shout out to the repeated Russell T. Davis joke of the doctor basically being like, tell your mom not to hit me because of Jackie and Donna's mom. And so shout out to that. And also poor Cherry's Cherry Sunday's kitchen that has and just apartment in general. That
I called her Ruby Road earlier. I apologize. It's Ruby Sunday.
Yeah, Ruby Sunday. Shout out to the continued damage that house gets each time the doctor comes around. I wonder if that will also be like a recurring gag, like Mavity, of like every time they pop in, just more damage is happening to that house. Yeah.
Gosh, I freaking love.
So all that back to Boom.
Back to Boom. Yeah, back to Boom. The bottle episode. I thought it was fantastic. I think that you're talking about like once again, Russell. Like we get Stephen Moffat getting back in his bag, coming in as a writer, writing a pocket episode, and being like how can I? Once again, we're touchstones of family. Mm-hmm. When the doctor says father to father, like dad to dad, and it's just like we have not heard him use that. Mm-hmm. Like what is this massive focus on family supposed to be about? Like what is the overarching thing? But I think the best part about it is the doctor steps on a landmine and doesn't have a sonic screwdriver on him for some reason. How does he fix it? Like how does he do it?
Yeah. I mean in general, I think the great thing about this episode is and
the flush tubes.
It's something they talk about in the behind the scenes thing of like this episode is very much boiled down to, above all else, what does the doctor have? The doctor has his words. And so, like, how do you showcase that? You take everything else away from him, and he can only talk his way out of this situation. And he does it by, convincing an AI father to retreat. He uses his mind and words, basically. His mind to realize that these people are fighting a war against an algorithm, as we all are every day.
Yeah, like the way this episode hits home, as somebody who works in like digital media analytics, like has like that's my professional background, even though I've been working in marketing for the last couple of years. The way that it hits, like fighting against the algorithm, and I had a conversation with like my mom the other day about like, she's like, well, what about doing like, I see all this stuff all the time about people talking about like looking for people to do like paid search stuff. I was like, no, I don't want to go anywhere near that right now. We just made a joke about Google's AI, but Google is just like destroying their own ads, like their own search SEO platform that they revolutionized. They've absolutely gutted it over the years. It's bad. Like it's bad being in marketing right now because you're fighting a war against algorithms. And so coming from my professional background and watching this episode, and they're like, it's this algorithm and it's being done. And it's like, in my head, I'm just like, oh, this is way too real. Mm-hmm. Like the stress and anxiety I'm feeling is not that the doctor's on a landmine. It's that this is a real problem. Mm-hmm. Which once again, Stephen Moffat does a great job of bringing in on this. the idea that like people are reduced down to flesh tubes, the way that religion, once again, the Doctor's great war against religion, continues.
Faith, the magic word that keeps anybody from having to think for themselves, or whatever that line was. Yeah.
Yep. Fantastic classic Doctor line. Bring up the concept of faith and the idea of belief, and him like really.
That's I guess another Easter eggy reference is it is like the Anglican Church, which have like they're the people that went to the ship with the angels. It was like that church. It was and the people that the Doctor goes to war with were the the militant arm of the church, which I love. And I love the the line that Ruby has here of like the church isn't a military. It's like since when is the church military or whatever? And the Doctor's like, since most of their existence, you're in a blip.
Yeah, you're in a weird point in time where that's not the case.
Yeah. You're in a time where they're not doing crusades.
Yeah. It's a whole thing that he points out is like for the most part, it's always been like this, Ruby. Like you're in a blip. You're in a
a bubble.
A bubble. Yeah. A bubble or a gully or something. He mentions it. Like this idea and goes and like we've seen it. The 12th Doctor famously had to, or not 12th Doctor, the 11th Doctor had to famously fight off at like that on Trenzalore. He was fighting against the church. Mm-hmm. He was like all the problems that the Doctors had to deal with. Like the Anglican Church has been behind it. For people who don't know, for Americans out there listening to this, the Anglican Church is the Church of England. It is the official state church of England, which means it is in a sense the faith of England itself. So it has constantly been especially in New Who, it has been a like source of like adversary.
I'd say especially in Moffat.
Moffat especially, he has had a lot of adversarial aspects to the Anglican Church being a space army in the future. So that's been a classic of Moffat's era for sure. And so like get the Anglican Church back into it. Classic Moffat. Mm-hmm. Classic Moffat. Moffatism's happening everywhere. You get, of course, we mentioned earlier the what's it? It's like Villain LLC or whatever.
Villain Guard.
Villain Guard, yeah. Villain Guard being this,
like it's in the past it's been Villain Guard, and I love that this Doctor says it Villain Guard.
Yeah.
To slightly hide the fact that villain is in the name, even though it is Villen. But
it's a whole thing that I love, that the aspects that they play with here with it, the way that it's a bottle episode, so we get to play with themes and concepts of like what does it mean to have faith? What does it mean to have faith in concepts and ideas? And what does it mean to have faith in organizations? And what does it mean to have faith in each other, in the people you have around you?
Yeah. I almost wanted that to be the Doctor's final line when Mundy Flynn is kind of chastising him of like, I thought you didn't like faith. I thought I was waiting for him to kind of have a line of like, I have faith in people. And maybe this is because it's hitting very close to home to our D&D game where like my character, the cleric, is very much a like faith in people, not faith in organizations or institutions that exploit faith in people.
You just redeemed a bunch of fallen paladins who broke their oath of conquest.
Yeah.
So this is touching home for you in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think of these 3 episodes, I like the ingenuity and the creativity of the Devil's Chord more, but I fully understand that this is going to be a lot of people's favorite episodes, probably of the season.
For sure. It
is very much, it is that like classic Moffat comes in, like is so dialed in on the specific thing that they're trying to talk about and kind of focus on that they just like, they hit a voice of the Doctor that can sometimes be very easy to overlook or to miss. Yeah. And this is very much is like a mad Doctor for a lot of this. Like, like this is very much like the tour de force showcase for Nshutigatwa of like all of the emotions he's playing while standing on a landmine, like the joy, the laughter, the fear, the protection when Ruby gets shot, the like just devastation that he has to do pretty much all just within his face. And the number of like cuts we get to his face where it's just like a single tear going down a cheek or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they got a good one for this for this doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. Gatwa is just such a fantastic actor, and he just acts his ass off in this episode, and it's fantastic. I think this is easily going to be people's favorite, just because it's like not just the Moffatisms, but Gatwa does have such a broad range of emotions he's getting to play with.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of the, like I said, you get a lot of you get some angry doctor from Gatwa, which is not something we've gotten to see in the past couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It is just such a deep, also fun episode in the aspect of the doctor playing with systems and not ideas or concepts, but systems, like actual physical things. This is a very physical episode. We are not dealing with abstract concepts. We're not dealing with, X-dimensional gods. We're not dealing with any of that. This is the doctor's on a physical landmine, dealing with a physical machine, algorithm, people, flesh tubes. So gross. So goddamn gross.
Mm-hmm.
Which also following up after Space Babies of her being covered in snot, Ruby picking up the casket, like the person's dead body. And just love the idea of also the doctor supporting, is Splicer her name?
Splice.
Yeah, Splice, telling her when he says, your daddy's gone. She goes, no, he's not. He's with me.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor's...
He's not gone. He's dead.
He's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the doctor being like, you're right. He's not gone.
He's just dead. Yeah. And it's like, just because somebody's dead doesn't mean they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's such a blunt thing, but also such an impactful thing for the doctor to hear after, half the universe isn't gone. Half the universe is dead. Doesn't mean it's gone. Doesn't mean it's been forgotten. Doesn't mean it's lost. It's just dead.
I'm curious how much I don't feel like they are hitting on that as much as you have brought it up in this episode.
That's fair.
I like it.
Am I reading too much into it? Probably.
Yeah.
It's my thing. I do that a lot.
Usually, yeah. I'll be curious to see if they come back around to that, to really kind of stress that. It struck me as a thing they brought up during Tenet to address it, during the 60th stuff. But I feel like the 15th Doctor hasn't really highlighted that as a focal thing of something he's thinking about. If they come back and make it a little bit more overt, then cool. Yeah, it is a thing to discuss. But I think his focus being a little bit more on the family and even a little bit more about his. He's talked about the Time Lords a lot. He's talked about his family a lot. He's talked about being adopted. I think they are going to circle back around to what it means to him that he's this timeless child and that his whole world was upended pretty recently.
Mm-hmm.
But then also the idea that and it's something that comes up so often of the doctor talking about how I'm the last one, all the other Time Lords are dead, but then we always find another Time Lord, or one of them always comes, the Master comes back. It is the at what point does and given that they are embracing things like the Toymaker and stuff, at what point do they bring back the Ronnie, or do they bring back the Valyard as these long lingering what happened to that character kind of thing that even New Who hasn't addressed or hasn't raised to this point, but some of them are getting name dropped in some of these other when the Doctor is talking about my people use titles and this title and this title. The Conquistador was a character specifically in the prose that you like to call out.
Yep. That's he referenced several prose only existing.
He says conquistador, which I'm that's a very British way of saying a very Spanish thing. But sure, go for it, colonizer.
To be fair, that's both sides are colonizers.
Yeah.
So Spain potentially not worse. England, definitely the worst colonizing empire of all time.
Yeah.
Spain is up there, though. Spain put up some serious numbers when it comes to like colonizing.
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
Spain and France, I think, are like competing for second place when it comes to colonizing. I think France is ahead because they still have colonies. But I mean,
technically, Canada is still part of the Commonwealth of Britain or what? UK still has colonies too.
For sure, yeah.
So yeah. Anyway,
they still got the Queen on all their shit.
Yeah, which they got to start updating to the King. Or maybe they're just going to be like, well, he's going to be dead soon, so we'll.
Have you seen his portrait?
Until the next one.
Have you seen his royal portrait?
I feel like I have, but I also feel like I've more so seen people who were like dunking on it or doing a parody of it. So I don't know if I've actually seen the real portrait.
It looks like
just like a big old. Is it? Here's the image that I've seen that I think is what it's really supposed to be, and tying it into Doctor Who. It's the stretched out Cassandra person from like the second episode, who also was in another episode of that early era, just like the flesh skin thing, but red.
Yes.
Okay.
That is accurate. It looks like a fucking Bloodborne portrait or something, like something from software.
Yeah.
It looks like it is haunting.
Mm-hmm.
It is haunting. And the fact that Prince Charles, like King Charles, this is his portrait now, and he's like, look at my portrait, everybody. It's like, this is the most evil portrait anyone has ever had in the royal family. Like, it's so goddamn evil looking. And it, like, part of me loves it because it's super gothic and like horror.
It strikes me as like an artist who is making a commentary that just went completely over the King's head.
Absolutely. This is 100. If somebody was like in 50 years, if somebody says like it was,
we're going to find out that was actually Banksy.
Yeah. If it, dude, like 100%, if it ends up being like this, I would completely believe it because the fact that it's like, it looks like, oh, you're trying to represent like all the blood that has been shed in the name of your empire. Like, if that was something, if the King Charles was like, I kind of wanted something to represent the British Empire in truth, so I'm covered in blood. Fascinating aspect to take on your own, like, interesting self-reflection on the empire you rule.
On your own legacy.
On your own legacy. Fascinating. Otherwise, 100% this could have got, in 50 years, this could be like an Emperor's New Clothes example. Like, somebody who said, yeah, no, I did this. And the emperor's like, and the king's like, look at these strong red palettes. Like, oh, I look amazing in this. And then the artist being like, holy, like,
got him.
God, like, what the hell? Like, does this guy not get it?
Yeah.
Some little kid's going to be like, oh, you're the bad guy. And everybody's going to laugh at the Emperor's New Clothes or something. But like, God, it looks so frightening.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody also compared it to the Vigo portrait from Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, that's what when I say I've seen like the parody of things, I've seen that. I've seen a video of him like taking the sheet off of it, and it's Vigo the Carpathian.
So the one I saw was somebody took his portrait and then posed it over Vigo in that scene when they're like scanning it and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's the first time I saw it. And I was like, oh, well, that can't be it. And then I looked at it, I was like, oh, it is. This is horrifying and frightening.
Going back to Boom. There's absolutely a lot to love in this episode. I love the commentary on like the capitalism of war, including like, why does it have lights? Because they sell better in a boardroom. In
a showroom. It looks they sell better in a showroom.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very much doing the thing, and people like I guess it is sometimes as heavy-handed as the episodes I don't like. But I think it's in the episodes I don't like, it's not trying to actually choose a side. Whereas I think here it is very clearly being like, this is the side that's right. And if you're on the wrong side and you're offended by this, good, you should think about that.
100%.
Yes. Also echoed with the thoughts and prayers.
Let's also be very real. This is an episode coming out during a time that an active genocide is happening in 3 different places: Sudan, the Congo, and Gaza.
Yeah.
Where I was talking to my mom on Sunday, and I was talking about I know that all the people are saying the economy is good. And my mom's like, the economy's not good right now. I was like, well, it is if you have assets and stuff. And she goes, we haven't really seen a big net positive. And I was like, you guys aren't, I was like, your portfolio doesn't have any like weapons manufacturers or anything in it, does it? And she's like, no, like, my parents have like are very studious with their investments. And so like, they're not invested in anything that contributes to war. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, oh, and then I thought to myself, I'm like, how many standard BlackRock and Vanguard portfolios that I have seen in my experience when I worked at Vanguard, doing operations work, for a very short period of time. But during that time, I saw it pretty standard to have Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, a lot of like arms manufacturers in standard portfolios. Like if you were to invest, you're like, oh, is this the standard portfolio everybody invests in? Cool, I'll invest in it. Good chance one of those three are in there.
Yeah. I'm definitely regretting that, like, my 401k or 403b, that I checked that box that says, like, I want to focus my assets in, like, renewable resources investments and stuff like conscious investments. Because, I'd probably have way more money in my portfolio, my retirement portfolio, if I didn't have a soul.
100%. So, like, this immediately ties it back into what we saw in this episode of, what I just talked to my mom about, what like you just mentioned here about like, people who are conscious about their stuff. If you're not, even if you're just a passive person who like, oh, that's the one that's yielding the most returns. Well, I'm going to invest in that one then. You're not looking into the portfolio itself because there's literally like hundreds of companies in that portfolio.
Yeah.
And the average person doesn't know anything about Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing.
They know Halliburton because we had a vice president.
The vice president / also Halliburton and BP Oil and everything, like Halliburton being involved in the BP oil spill. Yeah. Like we know about that from like pop culture stuff, but we don't know about these other things. So like we're aware of Halliburton and stuff also because of like the war that was kind of fought on their behalf in Iraq. A lot of like stuff that we are aware of now that we weren't aware of then. Like this is definitely going to be something that comes up. And so this episode coming out now hits hard because of that aspect of it, of like the consumerism within war itself. Mm-hmm. Like, why is America selling weapons? Because it's good for the economy.
Yeah. And even when I'm not actively thinking about that meta commentary that's happening, I am just like the thoughts and prayers and just how empty of a sentiment that is. And it's a sentiment we see every politician make.
Especially as an American who we see that happen with mass shootings all the time.
Yeah.
Anytime there's any sort of tragedy, thoughts and prayers. No action, just thoughts and prayers.
Yep.
Like it's such a empty statement that used to mean so much.
Yeah. So I think that the like I've enjoyed the political commentary that these first few episodes have had, in the same way that like I enjoy when game developers are like, our games are political. If you don't like it, don't play our games. And I appreciate that they aren't shying away from like making a statement, especially given the type of activist and type of person that Russell T Davies is. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Moffat got a little away from that in terms of like he didn't want to upset, like especially Moffat coming in at like the height of Doctor Who popularity. Didn't want to ruffle feathers, didn't want to, risk alienating parts of their fan base or something like that. I think Russell T Davies coming in being like, no, like, fuck those fans. We don't want them. Like, we're going to make the Doctor this, especially Russell T Davies is also a huge Star Trek fan.
Yes.
So like basically being like, and also speaking of Star Trek, shout out to that Easter egg thing in Space Babies where he's like, we should go the Doctor basically like confirms that Star Trek exists in the Whoniverse and like, we should go visit them sometime.
Oh, it's when she says, I think it's like actually
talking about like, it's like Starfleet, and he's like, oh yeah, like Star Trek, we should go visit them.
Yeah. The idea that like that's
the replicators or whatever. That's how they have like all their food or whatever.
There's that another thing also to mention also is that like Russell T Davies, first episode of him back, first episode, I'm back. Cool. I'm going to introduce you to the fact that Donna has a daughter who's a trans girl.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
right up front. I'm going to do this whole thing binary, non-binary.
Yep.
Yeah, guess what? Yeah, because I'm going to do that because that's what Russell T Davies does.
Yep.
He is like Moffat. I think the thing about Moffat is like I'm going to talk about environmentalism, so I'm going to beat you over the head with it, right?
Yeah.
There is a being upfront about it, but also being like there's a way of being upfront with something without it beating you over the head with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does it by introducing it to you, having it justified, and then just having it be.
Yeah.
You don't need to every 5 minutes reintroduce this thing and be like, by the way, don't forget about this. Don't forget about that Rose in these new episodes is trans. It's like it's introduced here, and here, and that's it.
Yep. And
that's
also,
all you need to know.
They don't both sides it.
Yeah.
Like the Doctor has his feelings on Faith, and he lets those feelings be said, and then like yes, he can still have faith in the person that he has just been working with and helped save his friend's life, kind of thing. But he can still think the larger organization that he works with, or that Mundy works with, is garbage, and that Villain Guard is garbage, and yeah.
It doesn't have to be a massive political statement. It can just be a small statement that is secure in itself and isn't budging.
Yeah.
So,
as a potential how they're going to work Mundy Flynn back into the mix, we do have the Doctor saying like, I'll come check in on you every now and then. Remember, fish fingers and custards are my favorite. Yes. As another callback to Moffat's 11th Doctor. One other little trivia thing for you that I think you'll maybe appreciate more than certainly I did. The Doctor sings the Skyboat song in Boom here.
Yes, he
while
does.
on the landmine, which was played on the recorder in The Web of Fear by the second Doctor, and then the Master would mock the Doctor in Power of the Doctor with that same song. So another little like callback to the lineage of the character.
Just fun. Just love the acknowledgement. Love the Easter eggs. Love all of this stuff that's going on with it. It's just fantastic.
Yep. So yeah. Any final thoughts on Boom before we wrap up?
No, I think it's just an excellent bottle episode. I think it's probably like an example of like some of the like one of the best bottle episodes Doctor Who has ever had.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just does it beautifully, and I think it's a great way for Moffat to kind of like put his foot back in the toes back in the water.
Yeah.
It's great seeing him work with Russell T Davies to like make something again.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we'll dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F, and in addition to that, like what is your hierarchy of these episodes? Like, what's your favorite? What's your second? And then what's the weakest? Even if it's not like a weak episode, what's the? So yeah, grade and A+ to F. I'll go first. I mean, like they're an easy A+ for me.
Oh yeah, they're all A+.
I think I'm having a ton of fun here, and so yeah, like I said, I think Devil's Chord for the like fun and creative new things it's doing is my favorite, and then I think Boom, another great Moffat episode, and maybe over time I'll flip it and just really enjoy the way that the Doctor uses his words in the episode more so than like the maestro and the big bombasticness. I don't think I will. I think I'm too much of a theater kid to not love the Devil's Chord a little bit better.
Problem. Devil's Chord I think will always be the top one for us.
And then Space Babies. And if you want to throw in Church on Ruby Road, I think Church on Ruby Road would go in there, and Space Babies is the weakest for me, as it is more than anything, like it is the most filler episode of these episodes, but also it is still a like solid, like good fun thing.
Well, it's a monster of the week episode.
It is a monster of the week episode.
At its core, that's
it is hitting a lot of like, here's a classic kind of Doctor Who episode.
Absolutely.
For me, it is the like, I don't like the babies. I don't like the CG of the babies talking. And in particular, like the disconnect of Eric, the baby, being like, I love you, Ruby, while the face on the kid is like, get me as far away from you as possible. It's like, that's not what that baby was saying right there with their eyes. So like, figure out a different way to tell that story, I guess, is where I'm coming. Like, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is just, the babies are just always wearing helmets, and so we don't see their faces while they're talking, but they're very clearly babies. I don't know. that there was too much of that for me to put that anywhere above the weakest of the episodes thus far.
No,
it might not stay there, but yeah.
I think it definitively is. It's a Monster of the Week episode, and those are definitively, in my opinion, the weakest Doctor Who episodes.
Mm-hmm.
They never reached the appeal of a bottle episode or a serious integral plot episode.
It also depends on like what you constitute as a bottle episode.
Sure.
Because like Blink, for me, I would categorize as a Monster of the Week episode, and it is one of the best episodes.
But Blink isn't. That's the thing. Blink is like the anomaly there, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's like examples of like anomalies of bottle episodes or Monster of the Week episodes being some of the best episodes. But in my opinion, it really goes for me. Oh God, I really love.
Like,
yeah, for me,
so much of this era, of course, is also been driven by like it is a product of this time in that a lot of these are season-long arcs or multi-season-long arcs, especially if you want to get in the Moffat stuff of like, we're gonna plant some seeds in his first episode that are gonna pay off over the course of the next 3 years of the 11th Doctor, versus like older Who, where it was like, all right, this is a series we're gonna be doing, and it's a 4-episode arc. And that's like, that was the Monster of the Week kind of thing. There was like, this is the arc where we're going to be talking about the Martians, the ice Martians or whatever, the ice warriors on Mars. So I think Monster of the Week in and among season-long arcs these days is the like weird thing, because even those episodes will have usually some kind of like tie or hook that is like looping into the larger theme here. Like in the Space Babies, what's this weird thing with Ruby's mom, like the memory changing and the snow falling and like in a disparate location kind of thing, and then also the weird Susan Twistness of all of these episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing about, I don't think any of these are bad episodes. Like we said, they're A+s for both of us. Space Babies is the weakest one for me, followed up by Boom. Church on Ruby Road goes ahead of Boom for me, but I think the Maestro, the
Devil's
Chord is the best episode so far this season. I think the villain is spectacular in every fashion and just dominates the scene whenever they're a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to their wig and their wardrobe as well. We didn't highlight that, but
they are beyond fabulous and horrifying. It gives me big early John Waters career stuff. His work with drag performers then.
It is very Hairspray.
Yes, very Hairspray, very there's a few other ones that he's done that were like way less mainstream, way less like independent, way less mainstream stuff. Borderline trauma stuff, some of his stuff.
Was it Divine?
Divine.
Divine. That was the
big Divine, like a British Divine sort of feel to this villain, and just over the top. For anybody who doesn't know, Divine is also the inspiration of Ursula.
Of Ursula, yeah.
Just like
in The Little Mermaid,
like somehow,
Little Mermaid,
somehow like in the era of hyper conservative Christian America through the 70s and 80s, somehow was like breaking into the mainstream.
I mean, it's there's definitely that. The trick for making it Disney mainstream was being like, well, we're just not going to tell people that was based on a drag queen. We're just going to make her a woman that just happens to be based on a drag queen.
Yeah. And it's just like, so very much Divine. Like I think that the performer would feel like I would hope that they feel proud that we would compare them to Divine.
Oh yeah. I imagine Jinx Monsoon. I mean, like, again, seeing the like behind the scenes stuff, Jinx Monsoon was just gobbling up every little campy moment that they got with this, and had such a blast.
When she pops out of the piano with the old lady.
Yeah.
And the like knowing look as closing the blinds to being like, I'm about to eviscerate this poor old lady.
Yeah. I mean, again, like going back to her playing, also shout out to like the gendering conversation with the 1925 music teacher. I'm a they them, or I'm a them.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I said she earlier. I apologize.
Yeah. It's a weird mix because the performer, I believe, goes by she, they maybe. admittedly though, I can't speak definitively that. I'm speaking to the fact that they are credited as an actress on IMDb, so I believe Jinx Monsoon may go by that. I have been largely blanketing it to they because of my unknowingness and confusion. But yeah, the way they kind of handle that, and yeah, again, like
she does go by she, her.
Okay, great.
So,
the
maestro
is a
they,
them. Yeah. So the way Maestro kind of like does that, again, playing the dun 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 and just like looks and winks at the camera is such a fun thing. And then again, it like the theater energy of it that ties back to at the end. Okay, we've brought the joy of music back to the world. So instead of the dreary London that we've seen and spent this entire episode on, also I love the idea that like they go back into the future and without music, wars, they like people fought and they didn't know why they were fighting, kind of thing. Love that. But yeah, the fact that it comes back to, okay, we've brought music back and now we're going to have a big fun musical number to celebrate the joy of music. It's a, like, I fully understand if people are like, you lost me in the final like number of this.
If you are not familiar with 60s films, this is a total weird thing. Or people might be like, why are they doing a Bollywood thing? And it's like, you're not, this is classic 60s films breaking out in a dance number at the end.
For me, it's a weird,
classic John Waters move too.
There you go. For me, it was a Austin Powers thing, which of course is a lens in which I view the 60s because that was very much the entire point of the character. So yeah, in the same way that like James Bond, like early James Bond stuff is ruined for me because they're just doing straight Austin Powers stuff. And I didn't realize that Austin Powers was just doing James Bond from the 60s, but like knowing how absurd it is now in the 90s, it's very much the same kind of thing of like, yeah, this is just an Austin Powers number to like wind down the episode and wrap up the episode.
Just a classic 60s trope. For people who may not understand, it also comes from like 50s era beach movies.
Yeah.
This is an
it's
old,
very much
old
the like
television trope.
It's absolutely the like Elvis Presley, like we're gonna sing on the beach now. I'm gonna do You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog for all these beachgoers or whatever while I'm surfing.
Classic shout out to That Thing You Do, where they are pretending to play their instruments. And they're like, how are these people supposed to dance if there's no music? It's like, it's just the movie, man. Just like do it. Like this is a classic set piece and trope of the 50s and 60s in film and television. I love it. You love it. Yeah. It's fantastic, but totally understand why people would be like, what's going on?
It is. Yeah, it is I guarantee there are times of my life where I would have like loathed the ending there, and thought it was too campy and too meh. These days I'm like, I'm here for it. Like there's enough bad in the world that just give me a bright, cheery, silly number.
You just defeated a weird eldritch, like existential being that is like some kind of god. Like celebrate, man. You return music back to the world. You got the Beatles to be an actual band again, man. Like celebrate. Mm-hmm. Enjoy that. I'm trying. Like
I did the lyrics themselves of the song aren't great, but it's a fun little bop.
I don't even know. I can't even tell you what the lyrics were. Yeah, I don't care. I don't know.
It's very much the like it is banking on the you'll remember. There's always a twist at the end. There's always a twist at the end, and that's right. Really like it's everything else there is just like you're overwhelmed by the spectacle of suddenly this cast of 40 extras dancing with the doctor and the Beatles singing it, and then some British songstress whose name dropped in here that I didn't recall. She's doing it. Murray Gold pops up and is doing it with the orchestra of kids and all that stuff.
Fantastic. It's such a great episode.
I think that wins out as both of our favorite bits, and it will be curious what the actual twist at the end of series 1, season 1 is here when the time comes. So I'm sure we will be back when the time comes to do kind of a full season wrap up here late June. That's going to coincide with Logan's wedding. So we might be like, we might either record it ahead of time before I leave for Logan's wedding, or we'll be a little late, but we'll see. We'll see what that one looks like. So, yeah. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Renegade Nell, which we did an episode on. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the series, which we also did another episode on. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which we've talked about. Loki, which we've talked about. And then the 4 Doctor Who specials, Doctor Who Special 1, Doctor Who Special 2, Doctor Who Special 3, and Doctor Who Special 4, which again is weirdly also listed as episode 1 of this season of Doctor Who. So you can find it in basically like 2 different locations. The Church on Ruby Road is either Doctor Who Special 4 or the first episode of the thing you just watched, kind of thing. Extracurriculars, you watch anything else on Disney Plus this week, Cam?
No, I just barely watched this.
Yep.
We wrapped up X-Men 97. I don't know what else to watch yet, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we're going to figure out what we're going to talk about for next week's show.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff coming out on Disney Plus, so.
So yeah, that is going to do it for that D Plus show this week. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to get super nerdy about Doctor Who for a couple hours, as is always fun to do. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, we just wrapped up this last week's episode on That Nerdy Site Show, where we kind of like delved into kind of like the ancillary things we've been doing. You wrapped up your Fallout 4 playthrough.
You ended up talking about like an hour of Fallout 4 DLC.
Yeah, an hour of Fallout 4 DLC and kind of like our gripes and issues and problems with it, which is also kind of like ties into the ending of Fallout 4 as well. And then I kind of talked about a lot of the different things that I've been hopping into lately, including Dave the Diver. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to that, feel free to check out our backlog of Let's Plays and stuff. Still no new like ideas or anything for new Let's Plays on the horizon, but if we do bring those back, they'll pop up on Tuesdays or Thursdays. So keep an eye out for that. If you liked what you heard, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. Or you can go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us, including articles and some of our like best of lists and stuff like that. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed. Woo-woo!